I'm Angelapalmer and I'm a Scottish artist based in London. And my work really is about mapping, and invariably it involves the natural world. Recently I did a representation of the coronavirus in glass of the original Wuhan particle virus at 8 million times its size, and it's now in the Science Museum in London. And a few months ago, I was contacted by Professor Andy Pollard from Oxford University, and he's one of the most eminent vaccinologists. And he leads the Oxford Vaccine group, and they asked if I would do an art installation to mark the 30th anniversary of the group. And it was a fantastic opportunity. They do amazing work, saving millions of lives, particularly children's lives, around the world.
And so we wanted to reflect on some of the past achievements, including our fight against 6 of the deadliest diseases, childhood diseases, particularly pneumonia, the commonest cause of death in children, and meningitis, which can cause serious brain damage or indeed death also. We've also been fighting typhoid, a disease which is spread in many countries where there's poor quality water available for children, and has a particular burden in school-aged children. And then one of the deadliest diseases that is faced by people all over the developing world, malaria, which has huge numbers of deaths, particularly in Africa. They're really important outbreak viruses, coronaviruses that recently caused a pandemic across the world, and also Ebola, which has caused numerous outbreaks over the last 50 years in Africa. We commissioned Angelapalmer to help us with this art installation because of her extraordinary work during the pandemic on the coronavirus, where she showed using glass a beautiful image of this terrible disease, which really caught the imagination of people, and we wanted to do something similar to celebrate our 30th anniversary of the Oxford Vaccine Group.
But what to do? And so my first thought was to create these diseases, represent these diseases in the same way as I had done the coronavirus in multiple glass sheets. But it became clear pretty early on that a lot of these, particularly the bacteria, have not been modelled. They're very complex. And I was in a restaurant one evening in Corsica when we were on holiday, and I saw above me a lamp that had been sort of fashioned out of straw, and it looked it was a kidney shape, really, and it immediately reminded me of the meningitis bacterial form, which I'd been looking at whilst thinking about how to visualise this installation for the Oxford Vaccine Group. So I thought, that's it, we'll maybe try and weave them into 3-dimensional shapes. And I also liked the idea that they were, suspended, as I'd seen that one, because it gives them a sort of fluid movement. They're there in our bodies, and what better way to show them? So I came back home, and what material to use? I thought willow would be the most obvious. It's a beautiful tree. It's a native tree, and of course it's known for its medicinal properties. Aspirin as a painkiller, and we're going back 4,000 years. So it was kind of relevant. It was an organic material, and I've been working recently in organic materials, in glass, in stone, and now willow. But of course, I have no experience in weaving willow. So I did a bit of research, and it became pretty clear that the 2 leading willow weavers in this country is Jenny Crisp and her daughter, Isabelle Wilkes. I contacted them, and I do recall my email starting off something along the lines of, this is a bit left field, but could I possibly interest you in weaving pneumonia, salmonella, meningitis, Ebola, and just waited slightly with bated breath to see what they said. And amazingly, they were up for the challenge.
When we received Angela's email, we did get very, very excited, because we are about pushing the boundaries of our material, and it seemed like the ideal project for us.
We received Angela's sketches of all the different bacteria, and it was beautiful because these sketches were all quite lively with pili and flagella and all these wisps and textures, and we instantly started thinking about how we could recreate that with willow and sort of manipulate the materials to reproduce these beautiful bacteria. And then there were the two viruses, the Ebola and the coronavirus. The Ebola had this sort of movement that undulated, and we were trying to work out how to create that, not through weaving, but through a kind of folding of the material so it had the same movement. And then the coronavirus, which is the sphere shape that we are creating on a woven frame. But then we had to work out how to do the protein spikes that come out at all these angles and how to recreate that in willow.
So here we are in the workshop right now, and they've been teaching me to do a bit of weaving. I've had a bit of homework to do. I've been producing these spirals at home, which I think they devised rather brilliantly for the coronavirus sphere. There have been various methodologies being worked out and explored by Jenny and Izzy as to the best way and really how to form this willow. And so far, I'm absolutely thrilled with the results. With all 6 elements complete, we were ready to install at the Natural History Museum in Oxford. The only issue on the day was the coronavirus sphere with its protruding spiral protein spikes. We just couldn't fit it in through the museum's doors, any of the doors. So, along with the museum's curators and specialists, Jenny and Izzy carried the virus through the streets, past science departments and in through the back door of the pit rivers. Finally, once inside, it was time to set up these strange lethal pathogens and let them take up temporary residence in the main gallery of this extraordinary and iconic museum. This is the meningitis, and we used a technique called the 3-rod whale, which is a basket-making term, to create this, and it's quite biological, I think, with the texture, and we've got 2 coffee bean shapes which are just touching. This is the pneumonia representation. You have here the strep throat, where you've got the string of 6 spheres, and then where you've got the pairs, you have full-blown pneumonia. This, a very familiar looking form, I think, to most people, coronavirus, and as you can see, the protruding spikes, the protein spikes, which we used on a bobbin. We wound our stripped willow around the bobbin and created these exploding spikes, I think, quite effectively. This is typhoid. This is the Salmonella typhi bacteria. And you have got here the pili, which is the kind of the hairy coating on the bacterium, and the flagella, which just flies off it. And this these whip-like flagella is what helps the bacterium to move around the human body. This is the malaria vessel. It is the malaria parasite, the shape when it invades the human blood cell, when it's a teardrop shape, and inside you will hear the sound of the most dangerous mosquito in the world. It plays for 1 minute, and then there is a pause of 10 seconds to reflect the fact that every 60 seconds, a child under the age of 5 dies of malaria. And finally, we have Ebola, this great, slithering, dynamic, rather menacing form. It's, I think, an incredible piece that's got so much movement in it. I think that the weavers were following this very sinuous shape And it's got, I think, real drama and menace, which of course is what it encapsulates. What you see here is the Deadly Six, Oxford's battle with the microbial world. And really, it is a battleground we're looking at here, because these are 6 key diseases amongst the many diseases that the Oxford Vaccine Group has had a pivotal role in finding breakthrough vaccines for. And these are very, very clever bacteria, viruses, and parasites. As soon as a vaccine is found, they will adapt, they will evolve. We've seen it with the coronavirus. They're out to survive, and the Oxford Vaccine Group and their colleagues, other departments, international partners, they're out to outsmart them. And in doing so, they're saving millions of lives, and it's particularly children's lives. Children from the poorer areas, the more vulnerable areas, that take the burden of these diseases. What they're doing is truly phenomenal work.